I'd been to the New Zealand Drama School, as it was called then, and I went there when I was 17, graduated when I was 19, got myself an agent, waited for the offers to flood in. Didn't exactly flood, but you know, your agent rings you up and says there's a role to audition for on close to home, and you go and you audition, you get the role, you're there. You know, you think, oh, I've started, I'm a professional actor now. If you've never been in front of a camera before, you've got no awareness. The way I see it now, if you're in a film or a television production, the camera is the privileged audience. In fact, it's the only audience. So everything that you're doing is actually for that camera, but you have to do it with no apparent awareness that that camera is there. And I didn't understand that at all. So when I look at my early acting work on camera, I wince. A lot of people wince when they watch themselves. But it's because of that. I think I was just acting as if I was on a stage, as if there was no difference. And there's a really big difference. Oh, The Marching Girls was huge for me because it was my idea. I created all the characters and the story, and I did that never expecting that it would be made. I did that because I was applying to become a trainee director at Avalon because I decided that I would like to direct. I was so lucky. My producer was Steve LaHood and the script editor was Pip Byrne, and they were so supportive to me. My first script writing attempt, because the idea was I would write the whole thing. But my first script writing attempt was so extraordinary from their point of view. It was as thick as a phone book. It was just enormous. And they must have read the script and gone, oh my God, you know, we've commissioned her to make a 7-part series and this is what she comes up with. So they very tactfully said to me, look, we might need to get a few more experienced writers on this. And at first I thought, no, that'll be terrible. And then I calmed down a bit and thought, well, you know, I could learn a few things. So they found some more writers, and then I had another go at a script, and I did a lot better because I could see that my first attempt was bad. So I learned and I improved, and I worked with the other writers, and we got there. You know, but if they had freaked out at my first attempt and just ditched me, as they sort of technically had a right to do, I wouldn't have learned anything, and I would have felt really ripped off and disappointed. And I've heard of plenty of other young writers who've had that experience, the bad experience, where they'll go, they took my idea and I was down the road, and you know, that could easily have been me, but it wasn't. I was very attracted to the family in the story and how she depicted that family. It just rang so true. It was really ordinary, but it did have a lightness and a humour that I really liked. And I guess what I wanted to add to it was sex, because there's usually sex in the stories that I'm interested in some way. She was very generous with me because in her story there's the christening of a baby and a family, and there is the old man, Pat, who stays home and won't come because of his religious objections to the fact that the baby's parents aren't married. But in the short story, he's not visited by a prostitute. That was something I wanted to add. And so I rang up Fiona Farrell and said, asked her for permission to do that, which she gave me, which was good. Because I thought on screen you could have scenes of him at home, missing his wife and stroking his cat and feeling lonely and old and being scared of his approaching death and all the rest of it. But there was another element that I wanted, that I took the liberty of adding, but with her consent. I wanted to make this documentary Virginity because I went to a lecture by James Belich, the historian, and he said in 1918, 1 in 3 New Zealand brides was pregnant. And I was amazed by that statistic. So I thought, okay, well, there's something interesting here, you know, the difference between how we think about how things were in the olden days and how they actually were, because people, I think, don't actually change that much in their drives and motivations, but the rules change a lot, and that was the basic idea. I've never seen another documentary like it. It is quite unusual, but the big learning thing for me was constructing a story that is not a made-up drama. It's a real story that can begin and end anywhere and develop anyhow, but still the basic requirement is, it's become such a cliche, but the journey, it needs to be a journey somehow. I tried to get television to make it for 10 years. And I was actually lucky that it took 10 years, because if they'd taken me up on it the first time, Rena would have been too young and Keisha would have been about 6. You know? So it worked out well in the end. Rena was always the person that I wanted for that character, because she can come across so tough, but I think she's can give you a wonderful access to what's, you know, underneath that toughness. I just think she's so authentic and terrific. So she was my ideal casting and the only person I thought of, and she was the first person to be cast. So I thought, well, yay, I've got her, what a great start. And then with Annie Whittle's part, we auditioned, and Annie was the first person to audition, and I saw the tape and thought, I can't imagine anyone doing it better than that, and no one did. You know, she just had a beautiful openness and simplicity, which I thought was right for the character, that she was a person who not exactly had never grown up, but there was a part of her that had kind of been locked away in a cupboard since that experience in her teenage years. So it was like she still carried that girl inside her, and you needed to be able to see that girl. And then with Emily, as soon as I saw her, you know, auditioning, it was the same thing of thinking, nobody else will be better, you know. And again, it was that real simplicity and sweetness, just somebody who is clearly not strong or brave or any kind of role model, but is emotionally available to you. You know, you see what they're going through and you feel for them. And Keisha, you know, she was somebody where when we were trying to think of who could be a young Rena, I thought, well, she'd be terrific, but she's, you know, she's a movie star. But I decided to ask, and and she said yes. I had a fantastic team working with me on Bliss. The production designer was Tracy Collins, the director of photography Dave Cameron, and the costume designer Kirsty Cameron. They're not related, Dave and Kirsty. We worked together a lot in pre-production, talking about the things we love to talk about. We love to talk about colour and texture and character. So we approached everything from that place, and we were talking about making a world visually that didn't feel stuffy or oldie-worldy. It just had the feeling of being young and the excitement of being young. We wanted Katherine to dress and move in a young way, even though she's living 100 years ago, she's still a really fiery spirit. We thought we don't want to create absolute contradictions to the extent that people will go, but in 1908 you'd never have that lampshade. You know, you didn't want to bring out the train spotters, but you did want to say, you know, authenticity is not our major concern. Our major concern is how this feels. So we wanted that, yeah, that was what was driving us, and we did want to make something beautiful, but beautiful in our own terms, which meant that it had to have that liveliness in it and that sense of somebody striving towards an era that actually hasn't happened yet. Like, she was trying to be modern before there was a modern in New Zealand. There was modern happening in Europe, and I think that's part of the reason why she wanted to be there so much, because she needed to be where that life was being created in art and music, and it wasn't happening here, but it was happening in London and Paris. I just wish I'd made more. You know, I wish there were more opportunities. I don't think I've missed too many of the opportunities that there were, in the sense that whenever there was a chance to make the kind of thing I wanted to make, I went for it. But there have been times when the kind of thing I wanted to make is not what the networks were looking for, so nothing happened in those years. And you do feel a bit sad about that, because you think the more you do, I hope, the better you get. And so every opportunity you get is a chance to grow and get better. And I just wish that there were more opportunities.